episode 30 of the Good Bloke, Not Woke podcast, where we explore confident and healthy masculinity from many different perspectives. Today, I want to talk about physical health and how gut health and microbiome health really impacts, and get some ideas from a real specialist about how to get into it and how to go about it. I've known Timmy McNeilly, as you'll learn in the podcast, for a long, long time. I used to do some seminars for an organisation here in Melbourne that was a home delivery organic food co-op, and called the Green Line. And I used to deliver seminars for them on various topics of health. And Timmy came along and he sort of got a bit hooked, I think. And anyway, he sort of stayed connected for a long time. He used to send me a lot of emails and he would turn up at my events, and I just watched him move along. And now he's one of the most gifted fermenters that I know of. He's doing magnificent work and he's very creative and he's courageous enough to try new things, and he comes up with some amazing stuff. And I've got to say, he's one of the healthiest looking people I've ever met as well. So he's real testimony to what he does and what he practices in the world. So I think you're probably going to really like this conversation. And at the end, you'll be able to get links to Timmy's workshops. So if you want to learn more and become a bit more skillful in the fermentation world, well, you'll be able to follow Tim. So let's get to it. So welcome everybody to this episode of the Good Bloke, Not Woke podcast. And welcome my old friend, Tim McNeilly, up there on the Sunshine Coast.
G'day, John. How are you
doing, mate?
Amazing. Yeah, it's been a while since we've actually connected in person, but I met you, when would it have been? 20 years ago?
More than that, it was 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
I was doing those seminars at the Green Line in 1994 through 96.
Wow. Well, that's when I met you. I was working at the Green Line and I come to your talk, and since that day, I haven't eaten meat. You not convinced me, but you talked to me about how McDonald's make the hamburgers and the whole meat industry. And I just had a ham and pineapple pizza and I felt really sick, and I haven't eaten meat since that day.
Isn't it funny, hey? It's so interesting. It's, yeah, God, for me now, it's, 43 years since I've eaten meat or fish or anything like that. And, but, it's so interesting because, we have a lot of people who are, I've got good friends who've gone with the trend and have gone complete carnivore, and they swear by it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I used to judge people and all that and what's wrong with them. And now it's like everyone's got their own views or realities or beliefs. And I just say, if people do want to eat meat, just eat the highest quality you can get, just not the commercial stuff with all the crap in it.
Yeah, no, very, very true. So, mate, what a journey. I mean, you sort of stayed connected to me. I used to call you my serial follower. Because you used to email me and you're a curious bugger, and I love that because I'm driven by curiosity myself. But now you're doing all this incredible work, doing fermenting, etc. And by the way, my wife Lassen, she says to me about my kimchi, she says, Johnny, I haven't learned to like it yet. But she absolutely loves your purple cabbage sauerkraut.
Yeah.
So
yeah, beautiful.
how did you get started? What happened with all that? Because see, I did some men's health talks on Tuesday this week at Box Hill TAFE. I did 4 one-hour seminars, and I talked to them about gut health and the curiosity amongst these blokes around fermenting is phenomenal. And because men are like that, if they latch onto something they think might work, they want to know about it. So.
Yeah.
How did you get started?
Well, it actually goes back to around the time when we connected back at the Green Line in the early 90s when I was working there. Rosemary, who ran the Green Line with Nick, she gave me some milk kefir grains. And that's a way of making a particular type of yogurt. And before that, the only fermenting I was doing or drinking was beer pretty much. It was like the standard Western diet, drinking a couple of litres of Coca-Cola every day, McDonald's, Hungry Jack's, KFC, pizza, all of that garbage, It's just like not drink any water, and learnt a little bit about organic food and how it was just a bit cleaner. And so I spoke to Rosemary and got a job working in the shop there part-time. And that's about the time when I met you and connected with you. And since then, or not long before that, my whole life has gone like 180 degrees to eating clean, detoxing, eliminating all of that toxic processed food out of my diet. You know, my lifestyle before I got into running workshops and educating was I was traveling the world and working on racing teams and hanging out in the pits and smelling all the fumes and, you know, checking out all the grid girls and all that sort of stuff. But I thought this is a great life, you know, every night going out and getting drunk and having beer and shots. And during the day, it was just Gatorades and soft drinks and shit food. And, you know, it's like such a turnaround. Like I've just pulled down off the wall. Here's a photo of me. This was, I think, the last Adelaide Grand Prix. I was working on the Jordan team, and that's me sitting in Rubens Barrichello's car. You know, it was like I've worked on the team and loved it, you know, just being in the adrenaline and the whole rush of it all. And I did a bit of go-karting when I was young and still love that rush of going fast, but just doing it a bit more responsibly these days. And there was sort of like no defining moment, but there was just a gradual shift away from that fast life into more of a slow life now, where I'm just really grateful to be able to share what I've learned over the last 30 odd years, you know? Yeah.
So what was your role in the racing teams?
Mainly just like a gopher, you know, cleaning the cars after they've been out on the track and holding the pit boards up, you know, so as the cars are going past. And one of the most adrenaline-filled jobs I ever had was at the Indy 500, holding the pit boards out. I did that a couple of years. And the cars are coming past like 10 feet away and they're doing like 230 miles an hour. Yeah. That for me was like one of the most, it was the best seat in the house. But I was also really aware that like one accident and, you know, it could be all over. So I was like situated between two concrete walls and I had like a 1 meter gap. And I was always looking at the cars coming towards me because you had like a millisecond to react if anything happened. And it was just like, for me, that was like a massive buzz. But now I just look at my life, I'd just rather be at home teaching people how to ferment and eating kimchi.
It's funny, isn't it, about Indianapolis? It's like this incredible city. It's only about 500,000 people, but it's got two of the biggest sporting events on the world calendar. That's the Indianapolis 500, plus the NFL will hold their scouting combine there every year. You know, I've been to that a couple of times, you know.
Yeah.
And it's quite astounding. So leaving that life, wow. I mean, I imagine that would have been, okay, there's some work in it, but a lot of fun. But now you step into this area where I know you've been profoundly creative. What do you reckon the switch was for you?
I suppose the more I learnt about how our bodies work and operate, like my dad was a GP as I was growing up, and he doesn't have any recollection of saying this to me, but I remember him saying to me when I was young, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're going to die of something. Because doctors aren't really trained in nutrition. You know, there's some beautiful people in the health industry, but they've been sidetracked, I suppose, from really how our bodies work. And they're brought into that whole Western medical system with the pharmaceuticals and a drug for every ill and all that sort of stuff. And it's more like it's taking us away from really trusting our own instincts on how our bodies operate and how our bodies work and how our bodies heal.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're really on an exciting trajectory, aren't we? Because I was telling the groups on Tuesday that when my son Shane was born in 1990, the midwives bathed him within 2 hours of his birth. When my grandson Jack was born in January 2021, the midwives instructed my son and his partner Molly to not bathe the baby for 7 or 8 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
It's
been a
amazing,
shift
isn't
in
it?
understanding, you know?
Yeah, like the whole way that talking about births, you know, like we're pretty much when we get born, we don't have a lot of bacteria in us and on us. And most of our initial introduction to the bacterial world is when we pass through the birth canal. We're getting a massive swab of our mother's bacteria. And then when we breastfed, we're getting a whole lot of lactic acid bacteria to help us break down the lactose in the milk. So if babies are born by cesarean or they're not breastfed these days, they're already on a massive back foot. You know, they're not doing things the way nature designed. And Australia's got the highest rate, I think, behind Brazil of non-natural births, you know, cesareans. And a lot of it is by convenience. You know, there is still times when it's necessary and it's a real health issue, but most of the time it's just convenience. You know, the doctor's teething his got his tea time at 2 o'clock and he's got to get on the tea at 2, or, for mothers, it's more convenient. But it's sort of taking us away from that whole natural cycle of life.
Well, I was sitting in the Global Wellness Summit in Mexico City in 2015, and Deepak Chopra was talking about this very topic. And he put it in the most beautiful way. He said, as you pass down through your mother's birth canal, she implanted the ecology of the entire planet on your skin.
Wow, that's beautiful. I just had shivers when you said that,
Yeah, it's profound,
Wow.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And my two stepdaughters, they've got two kids each, and all of their births were cesarean. Not because of convenience, they had very, very long, difficult labours,
Yeah.
but the midwives and their mother were ready to swab their vaginas
Yeah.
to take as much of that vernix as they possibly could and still apply it to the baby's skin.
Yeah.
But
That's
that
happening.
was
Yeah, that's happening
because,
more and more now.
yeah, and that's because it's awareness, and thank God for doulas and
Yeah.
those spiritual midwives who are really up with all that sort of thing. So when you started fermenting, what was your first thing? Was it kombucha?
No. It was milk kefir, as I mentioned before.
Of course,
I
yes.
did that. I did that for about a year, and then got a bit sidetracked. I was probably in my early 20s and was living with a group of blokes, and of course the natural tendency was to ferment beer. So
Uh-huh.
we started doing a lot of homebrew and had a lot of parties, and it was another adventure, you might say, where I got a bit sidetracked from the health side of fermenting, but it was way better than drinking your VBs and all that commercial garbage.
Well, they say that an old Irish saying says that beer is proof that God wants us to be happy.
Yeah, and back in the old Middle Ages, when you couldn't get any good clean water, by fermenting it and turning it into beer, it got rid of all the bad bacteria in there. It was a good way of consuming clean water, you might say, with a few extra things thrown in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I never knew that perspective. That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
did. I
So
got a bit sidetracked for about a year. We were brewing like, it was 100 liters a month, a lot of beer, and it was all lots of parties and learning a bit about the fermentation process. But that was more of a fun time rather than the actual health side. So then I got back
yeah.
into the health side, and I made my first batch of kimchi. After trying some kimchi, I'd never tried it before. And it was just like, oh my God, where's this stuff been all my life? My life was,
Hmm.
I look at my life before I discovered kimchi and after, like two distinct stages of my life. And it's just like something magical about the combination of the garlic and chili and ginger with the Chinese cabbage and a bit of spring onion, a bit of salt or carrots or whatever you want to put in there. And just that flavor profile just rocked my world, you might say.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I mean, as you know, I've been making kimchi for a few years now, and this last batch that I made, I got so excited because I just had this. I don't know. I was buying the vegetables and I saw all these big red capsicums there, and I thought, oh, I wonder how they'd go if I added those to the kimchi. So I sliced them really finely and added it, and it just added a dimension to the kimchi that just blew my mind. It's phenomenal. And that's a
Yeah, you
really
gave
cool
me that
thing.
tip. I
There's no
haven't tried it
rules,
yet,
right?
Yeah.
There's no rules. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
it's incredible.
But I was with
So,
someone yesterday and she told me about she's from Sweden, and she told me about her mother's recipe, which is just basically carrots, some onion, some garlic, some dill, and some mustard seeds, which sounds delicious. So I'm going to give that one a go.
wow. Yeah, I haven't done much with onions. I'm keen to try though, because, yeah, I've just had a few things lately. I think at a Middle Eastern restaurant, I had some onions. And I thought, wow, they taste amazing. I want to mess around with them a little bit more.
Yeah, I did a batch of fermented onions about probably 5 years ago.
I
And
bought some from you.
same process, just chop up some onions and mix some salt through and then put them in some jars. And these ones, I left them in the jars and tasted them after a month or two. And I took the lid off and it stunk. They were like really bad. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to compost them. But I put the lid back on and kind of forgot about them. And about 6 months later, I discovered them. I thought, oh, I was going to chuck them out. I just thought I'll just have another look. And I took the lid off and I tasted them. They smelt really good. I tasted them and they were delicious. It was like
Mhm.
caramelized and sweet and it was beautiful. It just
Wow.
took a long time for the sulfur and all the flavors and compounds in the onions to really mellow out.
Yeah, right.
Some of
Wow.
the
That's
best
so
stuff I've
interesting.
ever made. Yeah.
What's it? Isn't it funny? When you think of these things that you wouldn't think would taste great. I remember some years ago I went and did some seminars for a construction company down in southwest Western Australia. And I'd been there before and I'd talked to them about fatigue prevention. And in that, I was talking to them about gut health and fermenting and all that sort of thing. And I send them a lot of resources. And when I came back the next time at the end of the gig, a couple of blokes came up to me and they're big blokes, with big beards. And they said, "Oh, you want a good time for a chat?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And one of them handed me 2 bottles of kombucha. I said, "Oh, what are these?" And he goes, "This is my brew. I want you to try it." I said, "Oh, great. I will, definitely." And then the other bloke pulled out a jar of sauerkraut that he'd made and this other jar with this brown liquid and white things in it. And I held it up and said, "What's that?" And he goes, "That's garlic cloves in honey out of my own hive." And he
Wow.
said, "That's been fermenting in there for 3 months." He said, "Why do you taste that?" Right.
Yeah.
I said, "How do I do it?"
Beautiful.
He said, "You just scoop the garlic out and eat it." And he goes, "And the honey," he goes, "just pour a bit into a cup with some hot water and drink it as a tea."
Wow.
It was stunning. I just couldn't believe how good it was.
Wow. That reminds me, I've got some garlic that's been sitting in honey, and I think it's probably been in there for about 10 years.
Wow.
So I have to give that a go. I'm doing a water
Yeah.
fast at the moment. I think I'll get that out on the table and have a go of that next week. It'll probably blow my mind.
Yeah, it probably kept the vampires away too, mate. Like
Yeah.
oh golly. So it's so interesting. So you must have, I mean, just all of the interactions you've had with people. Like I've bought gear from you, and you've dropped it in, and we've enjoyed it thoroughly. And have you had people come back to you with sort of their own stories about the impact since they've been consuming fermented foods?
Oh, absolutely. Like I've been fermenting now for around 30 years, and
Yeah.
I've been running workshops for probably well over 15. I've had over 3,500 people come to my workshops now. I've run them all over Australia. I think I'm up to 300 or something workshops. And so in that time, I've met so many beautiful people. Most of the people who come to the workshops, they're really open to exploring not just gut health, but health in general, and realizing that, we've kind of got a bit sidetracked in Western society these days with all the processed foods and all the crap that's pushed down our throats, and wanting to go back to that style of eating that we had, 100 years ago, and growing your own food and sourcing it locally and getting clean food, and just really, most of the people come to the workshops, they're doing it for their kids.
Mm.
They're doing it so they're either going to have kids or they've got young kids and they want to do it for them to help their kids grow up really with strong immune systems and good gut bacteria. So it's been sort of an evolution with that. But some of the best feedback I've had is, people, I can't use the word heal, but, just like having all sorts of improvements in their health, their energy, detoxing, clearing up a lot of ailments that in their body and getting off medications that they were told were going to be on for life.
Yeah, wow. So interesting, isn't it? And it's fascinating that you can't use the word heal because you should be able to, because if somebody started out sick and then they're healed, well, they're healed, right?
Yeah.
But I think that perhaps some of our listeners don't understand this, but when the microbiome is fully functioning and thriving and really optimized to the peak of its potential, the genome, which is really you, really can't get sick. It's that cut and dried. It creates like this stunning cocoon around the genome to keep it really, really well. And when people are sick, there's a fair chance that their microbiome's struggling. So it makes sense that if you get somebody onto fermenting food and they start to rebuild the microbiome, especially in the gut, which tends to be the core of the microbiome, good things are going to happen.
Yeah. Well, like no one's done the exact science on it, but there's thousands of strains of bacteria that live in and on us. Most of it is in the gut, but we've got bacteria on our skins, in our eyes, in our ears, and they're all slightly different. And in our guts, we can have over 1,000 different strains of bacteria. And comparing like Western societies to like tribes in Africa, we've only got probably 20% of the bacterial diversity that they have.
Yeah.
And, there's things that we're aware of now, like when you take antibiotics, that just doesn't kill the bad pathogenic bacteria, but it kills the good guys as well.
Yeah.
And doctors are getting better now at actually prescribing probiotics and yogurts and all sorts of ferments after you've had antibiotics to put the good bacteria in. But a lot of species, once we get rid of them, they're gone for life. We can't re-inoculate them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast some years ago. A fellow who's a bit of a specialist in this area is a medico who's really sort of dived into this. And he was saying that like the Hadza tribes of Kenya, which are a nomadic tribe and they move all around the place, comparing their fiber intake to the average Westerner. And he said to the interviewer, he said, how many different plant fibers do you think you would consume in a week? And this guy's a vegetarian, and he thought about it and he said, maybe 30 maybe. And he said, okay, and so with seasonal variations, how many in a year? And he thought about it and he thought, maybe 200 or 300, over a year. He said, yeah, it's amazing. The Hudsers, they consume over 5,000 different plant fibers per year.
Wow.
Yeah, and you see all of those species of bacteria thrive off different sources of fiber. So no wonder they've got such diversity in their gut bacteria, because there's such diversity in the fiber that they consume. And this then leads me back to the carnivores. I said to a good mate of mine who's following the carnivore diet, I said, what are you doing to feed your microbiome? Because meat won't feed your microbiome, And he sort of couldn't really answer it. But, it's just such a profound thing. Like I laugh, I make soups that I call 30-something soup, and I make salad that I call 30-something salad, because my challenge is to try to put 30 different plant fibers, at least 30 different plant fibers into that dish, But I think about the Africans and go, wow, how do we ever get there?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to talk about fibers. Like, I think in the West, we're only eating probably 10% of the fiber that we used to consume. Because most processed packaged foods doesn't contain fiber. And fibers, another term for it you may have heard of, is prebiotics. So in general, fibrous foods are prebiotics. They do feed the probiotics, the bacteria. So the more fiber you can get in the diet, the more you're going to support that bacteria, as you mentioned. But also fiber plays an amazing part in our diet, where it's roughage and it helps clean our colons out. It's like a broom which flushes everything out that shouldn't be there. It attaches to all sorts of toxins and things that shouldn't be there. So fiber is really essential in our diet. And if you're not aware of how much fiber you're eating, it's a really good test just to check how much fiber you're eating. And even like green leafy vegetables, all vegetables contain fiber. Even fruits contain fiber. So it's a matter of eating as much of those foods as we can to really support not just our microbiome, but our whole system in our body to detox.
Yeah. I had an idea that I put to a few friends some time ago who are entrepreneurial. I said, why don't you create a product that has, say, 4 different series of the product, and each one freeze-dried powder that's got 1,000 different plant fibers in it. So then you can make summer, winter, spring, autumn, so that then people could use these, take a teaspoon of this powder every day through that quarter, and they go through one tub through summer, etc., and see what would happen. But perhaps they thought the marketplace wasn't ready for that yet, but I'm wondering how far away we are.
I think that's like what's next in a way. That's what people are looking for, but they don't know they're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to really sort of explore that and see what change could be made to the Western diet to perhaps rescue that part of us. Because I really get concerned about my grandkids and their gut microbiome, and because they're not out in the wild like we were as kids, you know, and I just wonder if they're getting enough and what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of research done on kids that grow up on farms and in rural areas and surrounded by animals, and their microbiome's got way more bacteria and species of bacteria than kids that grow up in the cities. You know, and
Yeah,
these
well,
days with, antibacterial wipes and everything, keeping everything sterile and all our products are white and all that, it's just no wonder that people are getting sicker and sicker.
yeah, yeah. It's quite amazing. So in terms of like if you had a 45-year-old bloke sitting in front of you and he's never really done anything about his gut microbiome, what advice would you give him? And this is guidance
Experiment.
from
Yeah.
one bloke who understands, saying, hey, look, this is what I've learned. You're not speaking as a therapist or a clinician or anything like that. You're just giving some general advice to another bloke.
Yeah, I'd just say experiment and go and try a lot of different fermented foods and drinks. And
Hmm.
some of them you may love and some of them you may not love. But the idea is to try and get as broad a spectrum of fermented foods and drinks into your diet as you can. So you're
Yeah,
trying to really increase the different species of bacteria in your body. So go and try some kimchi if you've never tried it, or some sauerkraut. And look, there's some out there that taste better than others. There's some that are organic and not organic. So you really want to go for the highest quality you can get and just
yeah,
experiment. Just find what you really like. And you don't need a lot of this stuff like fermented veggies, kimchi and sauerkraut. You're only talking about having a couple of forkfuls a day.
yeah,
And like when you compare it to having like your probiotic capsules, it's almost like a different ballpark.
yeah.
I don't want to name any brands, but like some of the probiotics you buy in a capsule, you're going to get more probiotics in a couple of forkfuls of fermented vegetables if they're done traditionally than a whole jar of capsules.
Yeah. As somebody once said to me, those capsules help a bit on the way through, but they don't build anything.
Yeah, they help the companies that make them their profits. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, just experiment, just get creative. If your diet's been a certain way for a long time, be open to trying new things. Like I
Yeah.
know when I was growing up as a kid, there were certain things I didn't like and certain things I loved. And now I look at what I eat now, and there's certain things that I didn't think I'd ever eat again. If anyone's ever heard
Yeah.
of like durians, which is a fruit from Asia, and it's probably the most stinkiest fruit you'll ever smell. And like a lot of the hotels in Thailand have got big signs up saying no durians allowed, and. But when I tasted one, it was like the smell was like, eh. When I tasted, it was like, this stuff's delicious.
Yeah.
And there's another
Yeah.
fermented soy that comes from Japan called natto. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And it's made with soybeans, and you add the culture to it, and you ferment it, and then it's got this stringy, gooey texture to it, and it smells really bad. But it contains an enzyme called nattokinase, which is really essential for not just detoxing, but preventing our body getting blood clots and all sorts of stuff. It really
It was
works like,
yeah, a very powerful blood thinner.
yeah, it works synergistically with vitamin K2 and vitamin
Mm.
D3 and all about our absorption of calcium into our bones and our teeth. So it's really important. But the Japanese, they eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this is one where I first made it. I was like, I tasted it. It was like, maybe not. But I tried it by itself. But then when you mix it with a bit of rice and some avocado and some spring onions and kimchi, it's delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you made natto yourself?
Yeah, I've had a couple of goes at making it. It's a very acquired taste when you eat it by itself, but when you mix it with other stuff and a bit of soy sauce, it's actually really nice. It's got a very umami sort of flavor to it, which is something that we don't eat a lot of in our diets.
Yeah. Well, you've inspired me. I think I might have a crack at it because I've been thinking about it for some time, and I'm really interested in this whole thing. Like for men, like as we're doing, we're talking to men here, and there's a lot of men out there who there's a little question mark hanging around in the back of their mind. And that question mark is, have I got any heart disease or haven't I? Because a cholesterol test doesn't tell you if you've got heart disease. Now, you can go and get a coronary calcium score and actually get it quantified as to whether you've got heart disease or not. But we also now know that there are dietary things that you can do that allow your body to strip away any plaque that's built up in the arteries. And, vitamin K2 is a big part of that, which kimchi's full of. Have you got any other sort of ideas around that aspect in terms of just prevention for, the blokes who are tuning into this?
Yeah, as you know, I'm not a doctor, but I know quite a bit about the whole process of cholesterol, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of misinformation out there. Our brain has a lot of cholesterol in our brains.
Mm.
And cholesterol in our blood vessels is there for a reason. When we get tears and scars on our blood vessels, cholesterol comes in to actually heal it. It's like a matrix
Yeah.
which heals inside of our blood vessels. That's what it's there for. So if there's a buildup of cholesterol in our blood vessels, it's actually a healing response. And there's also something to address there, which is what's causing that. So you need to really look at your diet, and also basic things like salt. Like when we brought up on that Saxa table salt, which is sodium chloride. That stuff's really bad for us. We need to get rid of that. Chuck it out if you've got it, and go and get some Celtic salt or some Himalayan salt. And that's got like 80 plus trace minerals in there in the amounts that our bodies need. And it's a different thing, where sodium chloride is just sodium and chloride, and it's a chemical process, and it creates these really sharp shards that when you eat it can really damage your body. So all the misinformation about salt out there, and there's a lot of misinformation about cholesterol. So do your own research on that, but just be aware that not everything we're being told by someone in a white coat is there for our health.
Yeah, exactly. And I've read some really good stuff around just adding kimchi and bringing that K2 level up, and how it can actually, over time, reduce any sort of plaque buildup.
Yeah, and the other thing about fermented veggies and ferments in general is they do assist our body in detoxing. Like kombucha is really good at detoxing plastics and BPA out of our bodies. And we're told by science that once BPA is in your body, it can never leave, which is crap. So you need to actually be aware of the research on how ferments can really assist our bodies to not just assimilate nutrients, because you can have the best diet on the planet, but unless you've got the right bacteria in your gut, you won't be absorbing the nutrients out of your food. It also helps to eliminate toxins and heavy metals and things in our bodies that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, so true. Tell me, Timmy, I've got a question for you. So my parents first bought a pub in 1967, and it was in a town called Miles in Queensland. It was the Windsor Hotel. And, we were allowed to be in around the bar. I was 7 years old, and by the time I was 8, I was pulling beers and serving behind the bar, you know. And a lot of the men back in those days liked to have a dash of sarsaparilla cordial in their beer with a dash of sars. And I fell in love with sarsaparilla cordial, mixing it with lemonade or mixing it with sarsaparilla soft drink, and they call that a double sars. And I often wondered about those cordials, like the real traditional cordials, not so much the modern day ones that are full of extra colours and that sort of stuff. But I wonder if, like, for example, when I'm making kombucha, I might make blueberry kombucha. So I'll let my tea ferment for however many days it needs to ferment. And then when I remove the SCOBY, I'll add, because it's a 12-litre urn of tea, I'll add about 800 mils of organic blueberry juice, and that's just enough to give it that beautiful flavour. And the second fermentation is perfect. It's not too carbonated. It's just right. But I wonder what would happen if I added a cordial to it instead of a juice. Have you tried that at all?
I haven't tried adding a cordial, but I did try talking about sarsaparilla. There's some really medicinal properties to sarsaparilla. And at the time, this is probably going back about 10 years, I tried to source all the ingredients for sarsaparilla. The main one is sarsaparilla root, and it was actually banned. It was banned in Australia because I assume because of its health benefits. They said it was because, someone got sick or whatever, but you know how that story goes. So it was more like they didn't want us to have access to it. Now I managed to get some imported from overseas, and I made a sarsaparilla kombucha, and it was delicious.
Right.
But yeah, so all this sort of stuff, like herbal medicine even, I've done probably 60 or 70 or 80 different flavors of kombucha. And even using a lot of Chinese medicinal roots and herbs put in the kombucha. And I think that takes it to a level, anything from ashwagandha to asparagus root to Hisho Wu to schizandra berries, a lot of stuff that's used in Chinese medicine. It gives it amazing flavors. I don't know how the science of how the infusions actually happen, but they taste amazing. You really get the slight Chinese medicine taste. But if you're using something like schizandra berries, they're called the berry of five flavors, and they're really good for us. They contain so many elements in there that are really nutritious, and the Chinese have been using them in medicine for thousands of years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I've had a couple of your kombuchas that had Chinese herb concoctions in them, and they were delicious. They were quite amazing. And I thought, wow, an interesting way to take those herbs, those medicinal herbs.
And a
And
lot of it, I
so,
just encourage people, yeah.
yeah. So, what's next? I mean, what haven't you tried that you want to try?
Oh, wow. I haven't made apple cider vinegar yet. That's
Wow.
one that I
Do
think
you know,
there's
I
somebody.
used some, sorry to interrupt, but I actually used some apple cider vinegar to make a SCOBY,
Yeah,
and it
right.
worked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's got very similar properties to kombucha, and one of the theories about where the kombucha comes from, because no one actually really knows, it's been around for like thousands of years, is that it's like the mother in the organic apple cider vinegar, and that's what you said, you've grown kombucha out of it. So
Yeah.
an apple cider vinegar and kombucha vinegar, where you over ferment your kombucha, have got very similar properties and very similar tastes.
Right. Gotcha.
Another
Okay.
one
So
I'd
apple
love
cider
to make
vinegar.
would
Yeah.
be soy sauce or traditional soy sauce, tamari
Mhm.
or shoyu. And
Yep.
another one is miso. I love miso. Miso paste is just amazing. And some of that stuff can take 2 to 5 years. But I'm lucky I've got some really good Japanese people up here who make the best miso ever. So I'm not in a hurry to make that because I know that I can just source it off them.
Yeah.
I'm open for everything. I've got a book called Nourishing Traditions, and
Yep.
I've earmarked probably 150 pages in there with recipes, and I'll probably only tried a quarter of them.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing because, one of the things I've been saying in the corporate arena to people, if you want a hot drink on a cold winter's day and you're sitting at your desk, instead of drinking coffee or sweetened tea, just have hot water and miso paste and make a miso soup.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
one of the things I did a long water fast years ago. This is probably going back about 10 years ago. I think I ended up doing 28 days just
Wow.
on water. And I think day 8 or day 9, which was the only food I had, where, I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. All that story comes up in your head. And I had a teaspoon of miso paste in some warm water on day 8 or day 9 or day 10. And it was the most delicious thing I'd ever tasted. And just that little bit of food, you might say, in the water was just enough to not spur me on to just to realize that I've got this. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great effort. Well, as you know, I'm heading off on Sunday to do a 12 and a half day fast. And I really enjoy it. It's such a great program to do and feel amazing all the way through it. But one of the things they do is every night about 6 o'clock, they give you this 300 ml glass of a hot mixture. And all they've done is boil potato skins in water for a couple of hours. That's all it is, just potato skins. But it's like you've been invited to a French smorgasbord. And
Yeah, wow.
it's just sipping this stuff, and
Yeah.
it does sort of, it sort of helps you get through emotionally and that sort of thing. But so let's talk a little bit about fasting because, one of the things that comes at me every time I say to somebody I'm going to have to do a 12-day fast, they go, oh my God, I couldn't do that. How are you going to do that? That must be really hard. I took an old friend of mine to do, well, actually, even my wife came and did a fast with me and she was freaking out. I did last time, I did 12 and a half days and she did 7.5, and she'd never fasted in her life. And I was 5 days in when she arrived and she was really panicking about not having food. And 3 days in, she said, I cannot believe that I'm not hungry, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, normally for me, I've done probably 15 different fasts, ranging anywhere from mostly from like 3 to 10 days. I've only done one really long one,
Yeah,
but I find that the more I do, it's like a muscle, and the more I do it, it just gets easier and easier and easier. And my mindset before I do it, I obviously set it up right, where I'm not doing any really strenuous exercise, or I plan it well so that I've actually taken that time out to just go really easy. It's a really good time to do some rest, to
yeah,
really limit my exercise. I go for a walk every day and I'll do a sauna and I'll do some colonics and I'm getting massages, but it's just a time to really be gentle with myself.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, Mum's up here. I moved up from Melbourne about 5 years ago, and Mum's in her 80s now. So just to give her a bit of security to know that someone's here to look out for her. So yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool.
So
That's
going
all right,
back to
mate.
the fasting, like I find that once I've got blocked out the time, day one and day two are really easy. Day one's like so easy. I've still got a lot of energy. Day two, my energy's sort of coming down a little bit. I'm on day three today. Normally day three is the toughest for me. But today so
Hmm.
far I feel amazing. My energy's sort of leveled out. And that's where we go into a state of ketosis, where our
Mm.
bodies run out of all its carbohydrates, which is the fuel that we mostly eat and consume. Like before I fasted and was aware of it, I was eating like 3 meals a day, mostly carbohydrates. For breakfast it'd be cereal, for lunch it was sandwiches or whatever, for dinner it would be pasta or something like that. So we're always burning carbohydrates, and we kind of lose the muscle of burning fat. And after
Mm.
our bodies run out of carbohydrates, which can be like 12 to 14 hours, we go into ketosis. And what I've learned lately is our brains actually prefer ketones as a fuel than carbohydrates, because carbohydrates turn into sugars and they're very easy to digest and get the energy out of. But fats, they're a bit harder for our bodies to break down, but they're a lot more nutrient dense. So
Mm.
once you train yourself up to use that muscle again to burn fats, it's like how animals do it in nature. It's like how we're designed to do it. 100,000 years ago, when we weren't having access to food every day, we'd go through these cycles where we'd burn carbohydrates when we get food, and then we'd burn our fat stores when we couldn't get food. We've kind of lost that whole muscle, as I use the term, because we're
Yeah.
so used to having food 24/7.
Mm. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's so, I talk about, the reality that for a lot of people, their life, every meal is like Christmas lunch because there's so much available. They can have whatever they want. They can pile it onto their plates and it
Yeah.
tastes delicious and we all completely love it.
Yeah.
But this brings me to the next point about, I mean, waking up our willpower to make strong decisions and actually decide, right, okay, I'm going to make this change now. Now, I know you've done the Avatar course and you did a lot of that work and you understand the power of human will and the power of actually deciding to make these changes, like really diving in the deep end as opposed to just sticking your toe in the water and saying, oh, it's too cold, like
Yeah. Yeah.
really making a commitment to this lifestyle.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. It's all about mindset and your beliefs. And giving up eating food, I'll tell you what, stuff is going to come up for you. All
Mhm.
sorts of stuff about, oh, I can't do this and my addictions to food. And I just say, use that as an invitation to really look at that stuff and just be present with it and not to buy into the whole story of it, but to see it for what it is. And that's
Yeah,
perfect opportunity to then release it and let it go. We're so living our lives these days in our stories and our beliefs and our all that sort of stuff. And every time you get to see these beliefs, it's an
yeah,
opportunity to really work with it and let it go and just free yourself up from this load that you're carrying.
yeah, yeah. So true. So true. It's that whole thing about, what we believe or what we think we believe, and a feeling. Like there's a lot of confusion about feelings. And when you're fasting or you haven't had food for a few hours or a few days and that hunger comes, that's a feeling. It's not an alarm bell. It's just a feeling. And if you resist it, it's going to compound and get more and more difficult. Whereas if you just go, wow, okay, this is what my body's doing now. It's wanting its drug, whatever that is, and it's
Yeah.
turning on this feeling to try and drive me. So I'm just going to notice that feeling and let it go by. And it's amazing how it goes by.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's some amazing books I've got on water. And most of the times
Hmm.
when we think we're hungry, we're really thirsty because a
Hmm.
lot of us are really chronically dehydrated. And I find if you really think you're hungry, have a glass of water and wait half an hour and see if you're still hungry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been preaching that one for what, over 40 years now.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
still amazed that I can have a room with 100 people in it and they look at me gobsmacked when I give them that piece of information. After 40 years, I'm
yeah,
waiting for somebody to say, yeah, 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 we know that,
yeah,
but they don't, you know.
yeah, yeah. And
I've
also,
presented that at medical conferences and the GPs look at me gobsmacked, like, why didn't somebody tell me that at university? You
yeah,
know?
there's a famous book called Your Body's Many Cries for Water, which you're probably familiar
Uh,
with by
30,
Dr.
yes.
Batman Jelly or whatever his name is, and he's chronicled so or recorded so many cases of people who are sick and diseased and just heal them with water and
Yeah.
sometimes fasting, but mainly just water, getting them hydrated. Because once your body's hydrated, your bodies are electrical, and that's what we kind of forget. We're told that we're not electrical beings. It's all just all physics and chemistry, but we're electrical beings. Every cell is a battery, and that's where the importance of having the right salt in your body works as well. Because we all know with batteries, we need salt. We need a positive and a negative, and having the right amount of salt and the right quality of salt allows our bodies to really optimally work. And when they're fully charged, our bodies know what to do. A lot of the times we've just got to get out of the way, and our bodies know how to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. It's yeah, and we come right back to what we were saying before, how for people who struggle to drink enough water, adding kombucha and miso soup and those sorts of things help you to get your water intake in. I always tell people I've got a simple prescription of a litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight per day. And on a hot day or a day when you're exercising a lot, add more to make sure, and especially for men, make sure you're having a big urination every 2 or 3 hours, and the water and the urine's close to water coloured. And all of that process means you're really well hydrated, but also those big urinations means that your bladder, your urethra, your prostate, they're working hard, which means they're drawing blood flow, they're drawing nutrition, and they're not likely to start to stagnate or deteriorate, and you're likely to prevent disease in those spaces as well.
And our kidneys too, they're our biggest filters as well. So we really need to keep ourselves hydrated to keep our kidneys flush. It's like, I know what it's like when I've been dehydrated and I've gone for a wee and it's bright yellow and it stinks, and it's like, that's not natural.
Well, I was telling the group this week that I did some work with a road construction company. They were looking after the maintenance of the highways out in the north of South Australia. Now, in summer, it's regularly 50 plus degrees out there.
Yeah.
And one guy, we checked his urine at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 75 kilogram guy, right? And his urine was dark orange. He was so dehydrated, and he'd already drunk 15 litres of water. So that gives you an idea of how much water the body can lose when it's exposed to really hot conditions or exercising in hot conditions.
Yeah. And also, while we're talking about water, we want to talk about what sort of water you're drinking. Most of the water that's available in the cities has got chlorine in it, and chlorine's put in there to kill bacteria. So if you're continuously drinking chlorinated water, it's going to really affect your microbiome.
Yeah.
So you really want to, if you haven't got a water filter, look at getting a water filter, because not just what's been put in there, but there's also all sorts of stuff that's sprayed in the air these days that's in the water.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the water that comes through treatment plants, there's traces of pharmaceuticals in there, would you believe? It's all gets passed through. So you want to just be really drinking clean water. And like I could talk for a couple of hours just on water, like water, we think of it existing in 3 states, a liquid, a solid, or a gas. There's actually a 4th phase of water where water's a plasma, and that's how it is in our bodies. That's how it is in fruit and vegetables. So science is sort of slowly catching up with this, but there's a lot of research on it. I think Pollock is the guy's name who's done a lot of research on the 4th phase of water. So if you just Google 4th phase of water, and it'll blow your mind about what we're learning about water and how hydration really works. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It's amazing, isn't it? Well, as I think I use the Zazen water unit. Brilliant, gets rid of the fluoride and the chlorine, and completely cleans the water and alkalizes it before you drink it, and it's and Janet Vanessa, who own that company, I mean, they're just constantly researching to try to improve the quality of their product. And they've even got shower filters now that remove all chlorine and fluoride out of your shower water, which is pretty cool. So we've got one of those. But and some of the recent research around nitric oxide and how essential it is for arteries and keeping arteries nice and pliable. And without nitric oxide, arteries become rigid and blood pressure is likely to rise. And how it's the aerobic bacteria in the mouth that produce a lot of the body's nitric oxide. But if you're using alcohol-based mouthwashes or fluoride toothpastes, you're wiping out the mouth bacteria and cutting off the supply of nitric oxide,
Yeah. And just one more thing on the water, water is probably the most receptive element on the planet. And it's so open to like our intentions. If you've heard of Emoto, the Japanese guy who did a lot of research on how you can put your intentions into water, and then when you drink that water, you'll take those intentions in. So even he's done experiments where he's focused the word love and he's focused the word hate. And the water that he's focused the word hate on, the plants won't grow in it.
Mm.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot of research. There's a lady in New Zealand called Veda Austin. You may be familiar with her, where she freezes water and she puts a photograph underneath the water she freezes, and the crystals of the water that freeze resemble the photograph of what's underneath it. And we think
Wow.
that's not, that doesn't work, whatever. How does that work? But you just realize with that how open water is to our intentions. So on my water bottles, I've got this saying, which is Vev Mem Bet, which is an old saying from thousands of years ago. And the meaning of that is, with these words, I awaken the forces of healing and immortality in the water. So just being conscious of when you drink water, even draw love hearts or gratitude, or draw something or put a sticker on your water bottle. So that
Yeah.
intention's going in there. That means when you're drinking the water, you're going to be absorbing that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Wow.
Just little things,
Yeah. So cool. Well, and it's very interesting. I've also been experimenting with adding, because my wife Lassen has been in the essential oils business for many, many years, using beautiful, ethically sourced, wonderfully manifested oils, and even just adding some of those oils to my water, incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the healing properties of those oils. And there's that word healing again. But yeah, why do we need to be drinking any form of soft drink or anything that's manufactured when we can just use water and simple fermentation techniques to produce something that's going to be so glorious for our well-being? It's astounding.
Yeah. I remember when I used to drink Coca-Cola, and it was like, when the first 2 liter bottles came out, and I'd have a big swig of that, and I thought, you get the tingles in your mouth, and it felt really hydrating. But then half an hour later, I was dehydrated, so I drink more, and that whole cycle continues. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have to admit, the last time I drank Coca-Cola was when I was 18. Haven't drunk it since. But in my seminars, I say to people, I'm not saying you should never drink soft drink. I would never be that draconian. Just have a glass on your birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is amazing. Well, Timmy, it's so cool to chat and share these perspectives with you, mate. I mean, you've been a shining light, and I told you earlier you need a better camera for your computer, because in person, you're one of the healthiest looking people I've ever known. Your eyes are always sparkling, and it's a real example of what it takes, what can happen when you take really good care of yourself. So I'm going to make sure that I get from you all of your communications links so that we can let everybody know, so that people want to get on your mailing list, and, if you're running workshops, they can find their way to you and learn from you and learn how to step into this lifestyle. And as I say to people, don't rush, just start with one thing and get good at that. And then when you're ready, try something else. And there's plenty of time, and you can really set your kids off on an incredible path. And while I was saying that, there's just one other thing I wanted to throw in your direction for a viewpoint and a consideration. You ready for it?
Yeah, go for it.
So a little while back, I was contemplating this whole thing of human health and the rise of disease. And I was contemplating also the impact of consuming fermented foods on your well-being and guarding you against disease. And I'm wondering if anybody's ever done any research to explore if there's any relationship between the introduction of refrigeration and the increase in disease. Because I reckon that when refrigeration came in, people stopped fermenting.
Wow.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good. I'm not going to give you an answer on that, but I think there's a really good thing to ponder. It's like,
Mm.
I don't look at fermented foods as being the be all and end all, but it's definitely a piece of the puzzle. And if
Yeah.
it's a piece of the puzzle that's been missing for you or any of the listeners, then explore it. See how introducing these things, see how you feel. Like I'm 57. I've never had more energy than I have in my life. My mind's clear. I've got a really positive outlook on life, and that's not because of fermenting, but that's just because I've been eliminating a lot of stuff in my life that supports me being that way, if you might say.
Yeah.
And my hat goes off to you, John, for when I first met you 30 or whatever years ago, as you called me the serial, whatever it was, and you never gave up on me, and you're always willing to answer my questions and be there for me. And our journey will continue. And I'm just so grateful that we did get to meet that long ago. And look where we've gone now. It's just amazing. You never know how life's going to go or whatever, but just embrace every opportunity.
Well, mate, I think the greatest thing that we can ever give to another human being is our time and our attention. And I always believed that. But then when I did study under Harry Palmer, I started to understand the power of that as well. So thank you so much for everything you brought to this discussion. And I'm going to make sure everybody knows where to find you and how to contact you. And I look forward to catching up with you soon, because Laston and I are now splitting our time between Melbourne and Byron Bay. So we've got a place in both. And, we'll no doubt we'll find time to catch up and spend some time and maybe even get our hands dirty in the kitchen together.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be heading down to Melbourne in October, it looks like, just for a couple of weeks to run some workshops down there. But I'll let you know the details and you can post them up. And if anyone's keen to come along or whatever, they can contact me. Thank you so much, John. Really
Thanks, Timmy. Lots of love, mate.
I love you, brother.
And yes, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And please remember, be kind to yourself. Take these steps, gradually as you feel you can. And always out there in life, please be that adult that you needed when you're a little kid and you're in trouble or you're frightened. Thanks again. Take care out there.